I want to call a consult for palliative care and for the chaplain. The nurse nodded in agreement. We stood outside the patient's hospital room, leaning against the railings in the hallway. I called numerous consults before I met clinical clerkships. This was the hardest one I'd ever made. Not because the patient was any sicker than any others I'd seen. This was the hardest one because the patient was my mother. This past month, my mom was hospitalized due to complications of metastatic cancer. An 8-centimeter liver mass strangling her large intestine, causing obstruction. As if 2020 wasn't shit enough, this was the year that cancer decided to make itself known inside my mother's body. When I went back home, I was shocked how much weight she had lost. I could see the skeletal anatomy beneath her wasted muscles, her wrinkles sagging on her face, temporal wasting. I thought back to a patient I'd taken care of in a medicine rotation. He had pictures printed in black and white computer ink taped on the wall next to him, of friends and family laughing together. I almost didn't realize that the man in the bed was that same man. He'd lost so much weight, was so disheveled. The fragility of the human body, my mom's body, shocked me. After I talked to the nurse, I went back inside the room. My mother was asleep, her mouth parched, lips flaking. She was NPO, nil per os, or nothing by mouth in Latin. Last time they kept her NPO, they hadn't told her why or when her surgical procedure would be. She almost wanted to elope out of the hospital. "They're torturing me," she said. Without the proper communication, maybe it was a form of psychological torture. Think back to another man I'd taken care of who was recovering from gallstone pancreatitis. He was promised a cholecystectomy, but not a date. We put an NP order in, surgery got pushed back. We put another NP order in, the surgery got pushed back again. I felt so guilty, hoping he'd forgive us for the broken promises and empty stomachs. At least 5 bags hung from my mother's IV pole. Saline, potassium, phosphate, antibiotics, and TPN, that yellow liquid nutrition. Her arms were tethered to 3 IVs. She wanted to refuse the TPN, the antibiotics, the Lovenox, and every time the doctors came in, they explained to her why she needed it, but when she pushed back, they said, "Well, you don't have to take it. It's your choice." But then, those eyes looked straight to me. They seemed to say, "Hey, you're a medical student. Help us convince her." I could imagine her doctors talking behind closed doors in frustration. She was that difficult patient. But my mom had always been headstrong and stubborn, and desires to be in control in any situation. She hated the sense of helplessness the hospital gave her, the lack of freedom, the constant monitoring and intervention. And when the surgeon told her she needed a bypass surgery to relieve her bowel obstruction, she had a silent fit. "Why can't they just give me the anesthesia and let me die? What's the point of surgery if I'm just going to die anyway in a few months?" Her doctors just didn't get it. My heart wrenched in distress. I knew this was a call for help, not from the surgeon, the oncologist, or the hospitalist. It was a call for palliative and spiritual care. I couldn't handle this on my own. When the chaplain eventually came, he had his full PPE, N95 and face shield, but his gentleness shone through. He spoke in a southern lilt and tried to draw my mom into conversation, not about medications or surgeries, but about her life and perspective. I was tough. I managed to hold my emotions inside, but when he asked how I was doing, I cracked. I thought I was a rock. Turns out I was just a broken eggshell oozing yolk and viscous liquid. I was a puddle because I was tired. I was tired of watching my mom suffer, tired of trying to convince her that what the doctors were doing was to help her heal. I was tired of waking up to the sound of alarming IVs, tired of tracking her damn electrolytes on my chart as if I was the intern. I was exhausted, but I was putting on a front. The chaplain and palliative care social worker were some of the only people who asked me how I was doing, and when that question was pointed at me, my heart broke open. I started weeping. 1 week later, my mom had surgery. 12 days later, she was released from the hospital. My mom, overjoyed, said to the doctors she felt like a caged bird that could finally fly free. For me, those 12 days were a jolt, waking me to my dual identity. As a human being who inevitably suffers, and as a future physician who makes promises to heal that suffering. As a medical student, I would flit in and out of patients' lives presenting the facts of clinical disease. But what I hadn't realized was how much the hospital strips patients of privacy and peace. How limited medicine can be when it comes to death. How exhausted caregivers can be. How hard the work of healing really is. The story has no ending. No neatly wrapped bow. But beneath the heart-wrenching exterior, maybe it's a gift, reminding me as I conclude medical school that my medical knowledge is a privilege and a responsibility, but there are lessons that go beyond science and medicine. Lessons beyond what 4 years of school can teach you. These are the lessons of what suffering means, the experience of illness, the importance of compassion. And these are the most important ones I'll ever learn as a healer, as a daughter, and as a human being.